Pearson's latest book, Kingdom Keepers, Inheritance, Villains, Realms, give us a twist on Disney characters and parks. The new adventures features the most famous sea witch of all time, Ursula. Ridley, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Rudy.
We see the kind of havoc that the Ursula can do in the water. What happens when she gets into the parks?
When she gets into the parks as Vanessa, she is nothing to mess with. It's a this is a series called The Kingdom Keepers, and the third group of books, a trilogy, is called Inheritance. And the second book that I'm working on, they all stand alone and they all can be read separately. But this one's about the villain's realms, where Disney decides to make a big attraction that involves all the villains, with Ursula kind of at the top of the peak. And boy, does that mean trouble for the parks.
That means trouble for the parks. Let's talk a little bit about where we see Eli and his friends at the start of the book and kind of the journey that they're going to go on.
Yeah, in this book, I've always envisioned that Walt Disney, when he was an ambulance driver in World War One, that he came across some mysterious nomadic woman who gave him special ink, seeing this creativity in this young man, and that he went back and drew Oswald and Mickey and Minnie all with this special ink, and that there's a secret within Disney that Walt's magical ink had so much to do with all these wonderful parks and the films and everything else. And in Villain's Realm, Ursula decides she wants some of that ink. And she frees this demented chemist from prison. And the kids need to track down this guy and break up his lab and stop him from having the magical ink, or everything could go wrong with the Disney parks. And what's fun about the books is that although that I've always intended them for sort of middle grade readers, maybe late elementary school readers, we sell as many as half the books to adults who just want to see the research that I've done inside the parks after the hours.
Because, I mean, there's so many people that grew up with Disney, and you grew up with the songs and the movies and the toys and everything. And you don't save these stories just, for the kids. You're like, I've grown up with Ursula. I've grown up with Jafar. I've grown up with Peter Pan. I need to know.
Exactly. Those in the know need to know. And Disney has let me into their parks 30 times after hours when no one's there. They are the spookiest parks on earth. There's no music. It's dark. There's nobody walking around but me and one Imagineer. And we go on these rides. We walk the rides. Then they bring a bunch of cast members in and they turn them on for me. And I ride them 5 or 10 times. And I take notes about what's spooking me and what's going crazy in them. And then I work all those into all the Inheritance and Kingdom Keepers books. And I think readers love to sort of get behind the scenes and see what this stuff is like when no one's in there. So it's just been such a fun ride for me.
I mean, especially, getting it to go into the parks. I mean, obviously, if you think of during the daytime working hours, you think Haunted Mansion, you think Tower of Terror. But when you're there by yourself, is there a surprise as far as like what's the spookiest experience or the spookiest ride?
Well, they're all so crazy. I mean, I went into Space Mountain and we started out in there, and I said, you know what I think would be creepier is if you turn the lights on. So they turned the lights on, and that was way scarier than anything you can see when the lights are off. So it's sort of that you never know what's coming. You think, oh, that like it's a small world. I think, oh, this is going to be such a fun ride to do, and there won't be anything scary about it. But when I went through, the lights were off, the dolls were turned off, there was no music, and it was spooky. And I got scared in there, and I took some notes, and I wrote a chapter in the earlier Kingdom Keepers books about that has sort of become the iconic chapter of all the books.
As far as parks, do you have a favorite one or maybe a favorite time of year to go? Maybe when you're not working, but just like for fun.
Yeah, I mean, when are they not fun? But I've now been to, I've been on all their ships, which I think they have the best cruise line there is. And I've been in most of their international parks, and yet I still come back to Disneyland, Magic Kingdom, and for me, Epcot, because Epcot has Soarin', and Soarin' is one of my favorite rides, and it has the World Showcase. So, which is, for people who don't know, there's pavilions that represent 7 or 9 different countries in the world. And in Inheritance 2, Villain's Realm, I pay an homage in that whole series to the fact that Walt Disney envisioned a city around Epcot. So the books take place in 2040, and there is a city of 40,000 people around the park. The Kingdom Keepers have had children, and those children get into the park, and they find ways to draw portals through the Epcot pavilions into the other international parks. So as a reader, you are park hopping to Paris and Shanghai, over to Disneyland, and pursuing Maleficent and this demented chemist.
I want to talk a little bit about the beginning of your journey because you talk a little bit about Peter and the Starcatchers and how a question that your daughter had asked as far as, how did Peter Pan and Captain Hook first meet for the first time?
Exactly.
And kind of exploring that. Like, tell me a little bit about this journey with Disney on maybe exploring those other elements that we necessarily don't see, in the books or in the movies.
Yeah, well, with Peter and the Starcatchers, my daughter asked me how Peter Pan met Captain Hook in the first place. And I'm in this crazy rock band with Dave Barry and Stephen King and Amy Tan and Scott Turow, Mitch Albom. And we were playing a show in Miami, and I was staying with Dave Barry and his wife, Michelle. And Dave asked me what I was doing, and I said, my daughter asked me this question, and I think there's a story about how just a normal boy became Peter Pan. And so Dave and I wrote that story together. It ended up, Disney published it, which we had no idea anything like that would happen. And it went on the New York Times list for a year. They made a Broadway play out of it. It won 5 Tonys. The play has remained in the top 10 most produced plays in America for over a decade. It's just been this incredible ride. And along the way, I was visiting the parks and writing these Kingdom Keepers novels and now the Inheritance novels. It's just nonstop fun. It's going to come to an end next year with the final and third Inheritance book. But right now it's Villain's Realm, and I'm having a great time with it.
As far as the series go, I mean, you just mentioned Peter and the Starcatchers becoming a successful Broadway show. Could we see the series either a TV series, a film, on stage somewhere?
Could we ever? I'm just waiting for that. Yeah, Disney has been great in trying to develop Kingdom Keepers 4 different times. We've been close to either an animated film. They had a couple times that it was going to be on, say, Disney Channel. And just last June, they were preparing it for Disney Plus. So one of these days, I hope we will see that. I think it would be so much fun for the readers.
Yeah, fingers crossed that also helps. Also, possibly, Walt Disney was born in Chicago, so hopefully we'll get a little nod to maybe a visit to Chicago, at some point, and maybe in the third book.
It's a great city. A shout out to Anderson's Bookshop out in Naperville. They've been supporting the Kingdom Keepers novels for 20 years now. I just adore that bookstore.
A wonderful locally owned business here in the Chicagoland area. Ridley, thank you so much for your time today. Kingdom Keepers, Inheritance, Villain's Realm, now in stores, and cannot wait to chat with you for the next one.
Thanks for having me. Keep reading.
Thank you so much.